Warfare is supposed to be a numbers game. More soldiers, more guns, you win. But throughout history, certain individuals have treated that math as a mere suggestion. These are the documented anomalies, the absolute legends who single-handedly faced down entire armies and somehow came out on top. Get ready for the most insane solo acts ever recorded, where one person became the entire battle plan. 1. The Second World War ended in 1945, a fact that apparently nobody bothered to tell Japanese intelligence officer Onoda Hiroo. Stationed on an island in the Philippines, he received his last orders: to stay and fight and never surrender. He took that order so seriously that when leaflets announcing the war's end were dropped, he dismissed them as enemy propaganda. For the next 29 years, Onoda continued his own private war. He wasn't just hiding, he was a fully operational guerrilla unit of one, conducting raids and gathering intelligence for an empire that no longer existed. He only finally surrendered in 1974 after his former commanding officer was flown in to personally and officially relieve him of duty. This wasn't just loyalty. This was a one-man war against the concept of calendars. 2. Being a military genius isn't always about having the bigger army. Sometimes it's about having bigger, guts. Chinese strategist Zhuge Liang found himself in a fortress with only a handful of soldiers while a massive enemy army of over 150,000 men approached. Instead of preparing for a hopeless last stand, he did the absolute last thing anyone would expect. He ordered the gates to be thrown wide open, had a few civilians calmly sweep the entrance, and then he climbed the main gate, sat down, and started casually playing his lute. The enemy general arrived, saw this bizarre spectacle, and immediately suspected a massive ambush. The sheer, unadulterated confidence was so unnerving, he ordered a full retreat. Zhuge Liang defeated an entire army not with swords or arrows, but with a vibe check. 3. Some people talk a big game, but British Commando Tommy MacPherson talked an entire German armored division into surrendering to him. After escaping a prisoner of war camp in Italy, this absolute madman, dressed in a kilt and armed with little more than his own audacity, approached the command car of the 23,000-strong German Das Reich division. He confidently informed the German general that he was completely surrounded by a massive Allied force, and that if they didn't surrender immediately, he would call in a devastating artillery bombardment that would wipe them all out. The thing is, there was no Allied force, there was no artillery. There was just Tommy. The German general, completely convinced by the bluff, surrendered his entire division, tanks and all, to one guy. 4. Canadian soldier Leo Major had one eye, a fearsome reputation, and apparently zero patience for German occupation. During the liberation of the Netherlands, he and a friend were sent to scout the city of Zwolle. When his friend was killed by German fire, Major went into what can only be described as a state of controlled rage. He decided he was going to liberate the entire city by himself, that very night. For hours, he ran through the streets like a demon, armed with a machine gun and a bag full of grenades. He made so much noise, firing from different locations and chucking explosives, that the German garrison was convinced a full-scale Canadian assault was underway. They fled in panic. By morning, Leo Major had single-handedly captured a city of 50,000 people. 5. In the brutal battle for Saipan during World War II, surrender was not a concept the Japanese soldiers entertained. That is, until they met U.S. Marine Guy Gabaldon. Gabaldon had grown up in Los Angeles with Japanese-American friends and picked up the language. Instead of just attacking heavily defended caves and bunkers, he would approach them alone, unarmed, and just start talking. He would tell the soldiers inside that they wouldn't be harmed, that the battle was lost, and offered them a way out. It was an incredibly dangerous gamble, but his genuine approach worked. In one day alone, he convinced over 800 soldiers to surrender. In total, he single-handedly captured over 300 enemy combatants and civilians, earning the nickname the Pied Piper of Saipan, and proving that sometimes words are indeed mightier than the sword. 6. There are loyal bodyguards, and then there is Benkei. This legendary Japanese warrior monk was sworn to protect his lord, Yoshitsune. When they were cornered by enemies at a bridge, Benkei stood his ground to allow his master to escape. According to the stories, he was a giant of a man, and he single-handedly fought off the entire advancing army, supposedly killing over 300 soldiers. The enemy, unable to get past this absolute unit, decided to stay back and turn him into a human pincushion with a storm of arrows. The incredible part? Even after being shot dozens of times, Benkei didn't fall. He died standing upright, still guarding the bridge, so terrifying in death that the enemy soldiers were too afraid to cross until they realized he was no longer moving. 7. The legendary pirate Blackbeard didn't just have a fearsome reputation. He had an exit strategy worthy of a rock star. Ambushed by the Royal Navy, his ship was boarded, and he found himself in a fight for his life against a squad of trained sailors. According to the accounts of those who survived, Blackbeard fought like a cornered animal. He absorbed an insane amount of damage, reportedly being shot 5 times and receiving over 20 severe sword wounds. In his final duel with Lieutenant Robert Maynard, Blackbeard's own sword broke, but he kept on fighting until another sailor nearly severed his head from behind. He was less of a man, and more of a walking, screaming testament to the power of pure rage, refusing to die until it was physically impossible to continue. 8. During the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union, the Red Army had a boogeyman. They called him the White Death, and his real name was Simo Hayha. This unassuming Finnish farmer became the deadliest sniper in history. In the freezing, snow-covered forests, with temperatures dropping to -40 degrees Celsius, Hayha hunted Soviet soldiers. What makes his story truly insane is that he did it all without a telescopic scope, using only his rifle's iron sights. He believed scopes could fog up or glint in the sun, revealing his position. In just 100 days, he recorded over 500 confirmed kills. He was a ghost in the snow, a one-man defensive line that the Soviets sent entire task forces to eliminate, all of whom failed miserably. 9. The Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in the United States military, and Charles Commando Kelly earned his by essentially becoming a one-man fortress. During a fight in Italy in World War II, his position was under relentless attack. As his ammunition dwindled, he didn't retreat. Instead, he began a deadly scavenger hunt. For 5 straight hours, Kelly crawled from position to position under heavy fire, grabbing any weapon he could find: rifles, bars, Tommy guns, and even 60mm mortar rounds which he used like grenades. The Germans kept coming, and Kelly kept finding new ways to kill them. He wasn't just holding a position, he was the entire defense, a single, furious soldier who refused to let the enemy pass by, becoming a walking shooting armory. 10. The Gurkhas of Nepal are legendary soldiers, and Lachhiman Gurung's story shows you why. Manning a trench alone, his position was swarmed by over 200 Japanese soldiers. They started throwing grenades, and he calmly tossed the first 2 back. The third one, however, exploded in his right hand, blowing it off and severely wounding his face and body. For any normal human, this is the end. For Gurung, it was merely an inconvenience. He calmly switched his rifle to his left hand, and for the next 4 hours he single-handedly fought off wave after wave of attacks. When it was all over, 31 Japanese soldiers lay dead in front of his trench. He essentially told the enemy, "You took my hand, so I'm just going to have to kill you all with the other one." 11. Daniel Inouye would go on to become a respected US senator, but first, he had to have one of the most unbelievable days of World War II. Leading an assault on a heavily defended ridge in Italy, he single-handedly took out 2 German machine gun nests before being shot in the stomach. He ignored the wound and kept fighting. Then, as he prepared to throw a grenade at the 3rd and final machine gun nest, a German rifle grenade struck his right arm, nearly severing it. The grenade in his hand was still live. Inouye looked at his mangled limb, pried the live grenade out of his own useless fingers with his left hand, and threw it, destroying the final bunker. He only allowed himself to be evacuated after the battle was won. 12. To capture a key peak during the Kargil War, Indian soldiers had to scale a sheer 1,000-foot ice wall under heavy enemy fire. Yogendra Singh Yadav was part of the commando team leading the assault. As they climbed, a barrage of fire killed half the team and hit Yadav with 15 bullets. 15. Miraculously alive but in agony, he kept climbing. Reaching the top, he crawled towards the first enemy bunker, threw a grenade inside, and killed everyone. This act of pure, unbelievable grit gave the rest of his platoon the opening they needed to follow. Yadav basically took enough bullets to kill several men, decided it wasn't his day to die, and finished the mission anyway. He didn't just climb a mountain. He climbed out of his own grave to win a battle. 13. Henry Johnson was a member of the Harlem Hellfighters, an all-black infantry unit in World War I that the French nicknamed the Men of Bronze. Johnson earned his own nickname, Black Death. While on sentry duty, his position was attacked by a German raiding party of at least 24 soldiers. After emptying his rifle, he was shot and knocked down. But he wasn't done. When the Germans tried to drag his wounded comrade away, Johnson got up, pulled out a bolo knife, and went berserk. He fought in a whirlwind of primitive, close-quarters fury, saving his friend and forcing the Germans to retreat. He sustained 21 different wounds in the process, proving that when the bullets run out, true badasses just switch to Plan B, stabbing everything that moves. 14. The correct response to being ambushed is usually to find cover and return fire. For Danish-American soldier Mads Madsen, the correct response was to charge directly at the ambushers like a maniac. During the Philippine-American War, his patrol was pinned down by a group of 15 to 20 insurgents hidden in dense vegetation. Seeing his men were trapped, Madsen simply stood up, let out a war cry, and ran straight towards the enemy gunfire, all by himself. His charge was so sudden and so utterly insane that the ambushers were completely stunned. He killed several of them before the rest broke and fled in terror. Madsen single-handedly turned his own ambush into a full-blown enemy retreat by employing the brilliant tactical maneuver of being too crazy to kill. 15. If you're ever pinned down by enemy fire from 5 separate, well-defended bunkers, you're having a very bad day. Unless, that is, you have a Gurkha named Bhanbhagta Gurung on your team. During a battle in Burma, his entire company was stopped cold. Bhanbhagta decided to handle it personally. He ran forward, alone, and threw grenades into the first bunker. He then bayoneted the occupants of the second. For the third, he kicked down the door and shot the 2 soldiers inside. He then used his iconic kukri knife to take care of the occupants of the 4th and 5th bunkers. He single-handedly cleared 5 fortified positions in a matter of minutes. He wasn't a soldier. He was a human-shaped solution to a complex tactical problem. 16. Audie Murphy is the most decorated American soldier of World War II, and his Medal of Honor citation reads like something out of an action movie script. With his unit being overrun by a German company and 6 tanks, Murphy ordered his men to fall back. He, however, stayed. He climbed onto a burning, abandoned M10 tank destroyer, which was loaded with fuel and ammunition, and could explode at any second. For the next hour, he used its .50 caliber machine gun to single-handedly hold off the entire German attack. He was wounded, surrounded by fire, and sitting on a ticking time bomb, yet he didn't stop shooting until he ran out of ammunition. He then calmly walked back to his men and organized a successful counterattack. 17. Holding a mountain pass against a superior force is a classic military last stand, but Maratha warrior Bajiprabhu Deshpande wrote the playbook on how to do it with style. His king was escaping a siege, and Deshpande, with just 300 men, was tasked with blocking a pass against a 10,000-strong enemy army. It was a suicide mission, and he knew it. For hours, he and his men created a wall of steel, holding back the tide. Deshpande was wounded multiple times, but he refused to die. He had made a promise to hold the pass until he heard a specific cannon signal confirming his king's safety. So he fought on, mortally wounded, propped up by his men, until the distant boom of the cannon finally echoed through the valley. Only then did he allow himself to collapse. He didn't just die for his king, he literally put death on hold until the job was done. 18. In 1066, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the English army was about to crush the Vikings with one tiny problem: a narrow bridge. And on that bridge stood a single, gigantic Viking berserker armed with a massive two-handed axe. As the entire English army tried to cross, this one warrior single-handedly held them all back. He was a whirlwind of rage and fury, a human meat grinder turning the bridge into a slaughterhouse. Legend says he cut down around 40 Englishmen. He was so effective that the English couldn't get past him. They had to resort to cheating, floating a soldier in a barrel under the bridge to spear the berserker from below. They couldn't beat him face to face, so they had to get him from underneath. He was less of a soldier and more of a temporary, very angry architectural feature. 19. There's being in good shape for your age, and then there's Omar ibn Yasir. At the Battle of Siffin, he was over 90 years old. An age when most people are concerned with comfortable seating, Omar was busy leading a cavalry charge. He was one of the closest companions of the Prophet Muhammad, and his conviction was apparently ageless. He didn't just participate in the battle, he plunged deep into the enemy ranks, fighting with the ferocity of a man a quarter his age. His sheer presence was an incredible morale boost for his entire army. Who's going to complain about being tired when a 90-year-old is out there fighting like a lion? He was living proof that being a badass is a state of mind, not a date on a birth certificate. 20. John Basilone is a legend in the U.S. Marine Corps, and his actions on Guadalcanal are why. During a brutal Japanese assault, Basilone commanded 2 machine gun sections. For 3 days and nights, under constant attack from a regiment of about 3,000 enemy soldiers, he became a human whirlwind of death. When one of his gun crews was wiped out, he moved another gun into position himself and kept firing. When ammunition ran critically low, he fought his way through enemy lines to get more. At one point, he was holding off hundreds of soldiers with just a machine gun and a pistol. He was a one-man army within the army, a living, breathing force of nature who single-handedly held a critical defensive line against impossible odds and simply refused to be broken. 21. Taking on a tank with infantry weapons is terrifying. Taking on a Tiger tank is practically suicide. For British Major Robert Kane, it was just another day at the office during Operation Market Garden. Armed with a Piat, a clunky, spring-loaded anti-tank weapon, Kane went on a one-man tank hunting rampage. He personally stalked and destroyed or disabled 6 enemy tanks, including a fearsome Tiger. At one point, a cannon shell blast temporarily blinded him, and a machine gun burst blew his eardrums out. Did he stop? Of course not. He just waited for his sight to return, refused medical aid, and went back to hunting tanks. He was a human bug in the system of armored warfare, a single soldier who decided that giant metal boxes were his personal enemy for the day. 22. Most pirates lead a crew. Marcos of the Nesiots, a Byzantine buccaneer, apparently felt a crew was optional. According to a dramatic and possibly exaggerated account, he took his single warship and decided to attack an entire Egyptian fleet. His secret weapon was Greek fire, the ancient equivalent of napalm that could burn on water. He wasn't trying to sink them all. He was engaging in pure psychological warfare. He sailed right into the heart of the fleet, spewing liquid fire and causing absolute chaos and panic. The Egyptian commanders, seeing this single demon ship seemingly immune to their numbers and spreading unstoppable fire, lost their nerve and ordered a retreat. Marcos proved that you don't always need an army when you have a flamethrower and the guts of a madman. 23. During the siege of the city of Corioli, the Roman army was pushed back from the gates. It looked like the assault had failed. But Roman general Caius Marcius, later known as Coriolanus, saw this not as a failure, but as a personal insult. While his army was retreating, he charged forward, completely alone, and fought his way through the city gates before they could be closed. Once inside, he didn't try to escape. He started a one-man riot. He set fires and attacked the defenders from within, creating so much confusion and chaos that the panicked defenders couldn't organize a proper defense. This gave the Romans outside the time they needed to rally and storm the now unguarded gates. He didn't just lead the charge, he was the charge. 24. World War I. Trench warfare was about inches and attrition. Thomas Alfred Todger Jones decided to rewrite those rules. Seeing his comrades being cut down by a German machine gun, he didn't wait for orders or artillery. He took matters into his own hands. He crawled out of his trench, somehow cut through the barbed wire by himself, and charged the enemy position. He shot one of the gunners, then bayoneted another. When the remaining soldiers tried to fight back, he forced them to surrender. But that wasn't the end. He then noticed another group of Germans emerging from a dugout. He forced them to surrender too. By the time he was done, this one soldier, acting entirely on his own, had captured 102 enemy soldiers. He didn't just silence a machine gun, he took home most of the German payroll. 25. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir. During the Korean War was a brutal fight for survival in freezing temperatures. In the midst of this chaos, Marine Private Hector Cafferata Jr. found himself in a particularly bad spot. His entire fire team was wiped out, leaving him to defend a section of the line alone against a relentless Chinese regimental attack. For hours, he fought like a man possessed, moving from spot to spot, throwing grenades and firing his rifle to create the illusion of a full squad. When the enemy started throwing grenades at him, he would simply catch them or scoop them up and throw them back. He did this so frantically that he severely burned his own hands, but he didn't stop. He was a one-man feedback loop of explosives, single-handedly holding the line until he was too wounded to continue. 26. Roman centurions were famously tough, but Sceva was on another level. During Caesar's civil war, he was tasked with defending the gate of a fort. An enemy assault concentrated all its force on his position. Sceva fought so fiercely that his shield reportedly had 120 arrow holes in it and eventually just fell apart. An arrow then struck him in the eye, but he simply pulled it out and kept fighting. He was wounded in the thigh and shoulder, yet he stood his ground, a bloodied, one-eyed whirlwind of death at the gate. He fought until he collapsed from sheer exhaustion and blood loss, having single-handedly broken the enemy's spirit and saved the fort. His performance was so legendary that Caesar himself promoted him on the spot. He was a human shield who ran out of shield. 27. When a Roman emperor is about to be assassinated, you'd expect his elite Praetorian Guard to put up a fight. When Emperor Galba was cornered by assassins, however, his entire guard deserted him. All except for one man, Centurion Serronius Densus. Faced with a crowd of armed killers and with no hope of survival, Densus drew his sword and stood alone between them and the emperor. He denounced the assassins as traitors and single-handedly held them back, buying his cowardly emperor a few precious moments to try and escape. He fought and died alone, not out of any real hope of victory, but because it was his duty. He was the last line of defense, a solitary beacon of loyalty in a sea of betrayal. 28. Desmond Doss went to war armed with nothing but his faith and a first aid kit. As a conscientious objector, he refused to even touch a rifle. Yet, during the hellish battle for Hacksaw Ridge on Okinawa, this unarmed medic became one of the bravest soldiers on the field. When his unit was forced to retreat from the ridge under a terrifying barrage of fire, Doss refused to leave. For the next 12 hours, all by himself and under constant enemy fire, he located wounded soldiers, treated their injuries, and one by one, dragged them to the edge of the cliff and lowered them to safety on a rope. He saved 75 men that day. Each time he lowered a man, he would pray, "Lord, please help me get one more." He was a one-man rescue mission proving that courage isn't about killing, it's about saving. 29. Being a police officer in a remote station during the Malayan emergency was dangerous work. For Constable Hassan Chua, it was about to become a personal war. His small police jungle fort was attacked by a force of 250 communist guerrillas. He was the only one to make it to the station's Bren light machine gun. Outnumbered and outgunned, Hassan held his ground. For hours, he single-handedly repelled wave after wave of attacks, his constant fire pinning the enemy down and preventing them from overrunning the station. He became the sole pillar of the defense, a lone policeman holding back an entire insurgent force. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found the jungle littered with the bodies of attackers, all thanks to one man who simply refused to give up his post. 30. Lyudmila Pavlichenko wasn't just a soldier. She was a legend who haunted the nightmares of the German army on the Eastern Front. Nicknamed Lady Death, this Soviet sniper was a true artist of her deadly craft. In less than a year of combat, she amassed 309 confirmed kills, a number that places her among the most successful snipers of all time. This total included 36 enemy snipers, meaning she was actively hunting the hunters. She was so effective that the Germans began specifically targeting her, even trying to bribe her over loudspeakers to switch sides. Pavlichenko was more than a sniper. She was a one-woman psychological weapon, a silent, patient force of death who could paralyze entire sections of the front line with her mere suspected presence. 31. In the early days of the Roman Republic, an invading Etruscan army was about to swarm across the only bridge into Rome. The city was doomed. But as the Roman soldiers retreated in panic, one officer named Horatius Cocles turned around. With two comrades, he held the narrow entrance to the bridge, telling the others to destroy it behind them. Soon, his two friends retreated, leaving Horatius completely alone, facing an entire army. He held them off, a single point of defiance against a tide of enemies, using the narrow bridge as a choke point. He fought until the bridge behind him was finally collapsing. Then, in full armor, he prayed to the river god Tibor and leaped into the water, swimming back to safety. He was the ultimate gatekeeper. 32. Tibor. Ted Rubin survived the Mauthausen concentration camp during the Holocaust, so by the time he joined the US Army in the Korean War, he was already tougher than most. When his unit was being overwhelmed and forced to retreat, Rubin was ordered to stay behind and cover their withdrawal. This one soldier, all by himself, held a hilltop for a full 24 hours against wave after wave of North Korean attacks. His furious defense single-handedly delayed the enemy advance, allowing his entire regiment to escape encirclement. He created so much chaos that the North Koreans were convinced they were fighting a much larger force, not one unbelievably determined Holocaust survivor. He had already faced the worst of humanity and decided a few enemy battalions weren't going to be a problem. 33. Alvin York was a deeply religious man from Tennessee who initially sought exemption from the draft as a conscientious objector. But once in battle, he concluded that some things were worth fighting for. During the Meuse-Argonne offensive, his small patrol was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire. With most of his squad killed or wounded, York took command. He worked his way into a position where he could see the nests, and with terrifying calm and accuracy, he began picking off the German gunners one by one. The German commander, seeing his men being systematically eliminated, emptied his pistol at York and missed. York, in turn, shot him. He then single-handedly captured the remaining 132 German soldiers. He didn't just win a fight, he took the entire enemy team prisoner. These were the anomalies, the individuals who became a temporary force of nature. But a list of 33 is just a starting point. We know every history buff watching has that one story they're furious we didn't include. So, who is the single most legendary one-man army we criminally failed to mention? Don't just drop a name. Make your case in the comments and prove why they belong here. The debate starts now. And while you're crafting your argument, hit that like button and subscribe for more.